After the guys that murdered my mom and dad and shot my sister and me were caught, they were brought to trial. Leslie and I testified essentially as pieces of evidence about the facts of what happened in our home that night, things they said and did and what we said and did, and then that was basically it. They were convicted and then moved into the sentencing phase of their trials where they were able to bring in family and friends and teachers and preachers to talk about what good people they actually are and that they could be rehabilitated and therefore should only get a minimal sentence. Leslie and I were never allowed to give what we now call victim impact testimony. And a victim impact statement is your right as a victim or family member of the victim to submit either a written statement or to write out a statement and read it to the court, or just speak from the heart and talk about the psychological, emotional, physical, or even financial effects of the crime on you and your family. You can even talk about what you think the appropriate sentence should be. And this is something I think would have been huge for Leslie and me if in Ake's new trial, which was actually 7 years after his original conviction, if we could have looked at the jury and just said, we were never able to live as brother and sister in the same home again after that night because we were separated. We'll never, at least in this life, be able to tell our parents that we love them or hear them tell us that they love us and are proud of us. We had to sell everything that we owned, including our home, to pay medical costs and funeral expenses and just the expenses of living through high school. And we have daily reminders when we get dressed in the morning and see the scars from the gunshots and the surgeries. And there'll be people that'll tell you it's hard and it's scary and you don't have to do it. But I strongly encourage you that when the time comes to give a victim impact statement, that you do it. This is the one chance you have. And I believe for most of us, it's something we would really regret later not doing. And we've seen this play out recently in the media where the doctor who, for the U.S. women's gymnastics team, was convicted of sexually molesting girls and young women for years. And finally, they had their day in court and they were able to talk about what he did and the effects that it had on their lives and their families and even on their careers. And I believe the most important thing for them, the most important benefit, is the healing that can begin and the rebuilding of their lives that can begin now that they've had their voices heard in open court. And I believe that is true for all of us as victims, is that it's not just important that the court hear the information because they're trying to decide on the appropriate sentence for the crime that was committed. But it's also the healing and the rebuilding that begins in our lives. I'll say one other thing about victim impact statements. Every year I get calls from prosecutors and victims who have been denied by a judge their right to give victim impact statements. And as contrary to the law and immoral as that is, the problem is most victims do not have the standing to enforce these rights in court. And this is something I'm going to talk about more in the video on the U.S. Constitutional Amendment for Victims and why that is so important. I'm Brooks Douglas. Thank you for watching.